Attention, strap in. You're about to listen to the hottest sounds. It's the hottest mixtape in the world, and you've got it.
Welcome everyone to the Cardinal Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Derrick. Sit back, grab a cold one, whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic, or a snack, and listen to this podcast. I'm coming to you from Kenya, East Africa, county number 19. They refer to it as Nyeri, and we'll be talking about things affecting the youth today, specifically in politics. Now, the year 2020 has been a very interesting year for not only one community or country, but the entire globe. The year started on a very sad note as the Australia wildfires were out of control and millions lost property and millions of wildlife needlessly died due to an act of nature. Then we had swarms of locusts here in Kenya, which Kikuyu elders blamed on homosexuality. That is the most meme-worthy thing we've done in quite a long time. The passing of the legend in the NBA, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and the big bad of the year 2020, COVID-19. Now, despite everything that is happening in the world today, I think it's important that we focus on politics. And that's because a lot of the individuals born in the year 2000 will be turning 20 this year. That means a significant fraction of voters who are born in the new millennia will be voters in the next election. The United States election is less than 100 days away, and the Kenyan election is in less than 2 years' time. And a lot of young people are not interested in voting. Now, I think it's only fair that I state my political standings or leanings. I do not have a say, or I do not have a single interest in Kenyan politics because I did not vote in the previous election. And the one before that, I was a few months too young. And as far as the more American way of viewing things, I'd say I'm a left-wing, not alt-right, but more of left-centered. I agree with certain things, like I think that a degree of socialism should be there, but I'm also pro-life. I do think that we should take care of the environment and prevent certain animal species from being extinct, but I also think that it's important for people to get, there should be some level of equality as far as wealth goes and so many other issues. Now, Kenyan politics. Earlier this year, our Governor Kivutha Kibwana said that he's officially going to contest in the 2022 general elections. I was actually impressed, if not, it almost changed my mind as far as the political system goes, because according to Motahi Ngonyi, who you might know from the Fort Hall School of Government, it's that YouTube channel as of right now has 84,000 subscribers. He was very active during the 2017 general election. He's stated on one of his videos that it's not those who cast the votes, it's those who count the votes that make the real difference. And for such a long time, I've been thinking, why should I bother voting if we are working a rigged system? Because democracy, whether we want to admit it or not, is basically a popularity contest. Now, with 2022 with 2022, being less than 2 years away, we've had the better part of this term of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta being filled with campaigns, left, right, and center. My own family members are split. Some say that they would like to see the Deputy President, William Samoei Ruto, ascend and become the 5th President of the nation of Kenya. Some, on the other hand, are unsure. When it comes to these political coalitions, I kind of ask myself, do we ever see the bigger picture? When it's decided behind closed doors that a certain group of individuals will hold power for an extended period of time, and we just sit back and we're comfortable about it, because not a lot has changed according to the youth, those who are born. If you are born in the year 2002, it's the same year that Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and Spider-Man were one of the two biggest films of that year. So you're fairly young. Kibaki got into power, and unlike the passing of former President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, we could never meme the president, we could never criticize the government. Well, that's what I've been told, because I was too young to remember anything. And there should be a process in which we, the people, at least I think, should pick or choose individuals to represent us even at the highest office. Not a group of individuals decide who is going to contest, but we as the people should choose. I could be wrong on a number of things, but when you look at Kenya as of right now, the state of corruption is just alarming. We borrowed quite a few billions from the World Bank, and yet we spent 4 million on tea and snacks. Sometimes I scratch my head and I ask myself, there was someone in that office who decided to write that down. You're going to tell Kenyans that we spent 4 million during the center of a global health crisis and say we spent it on tea and snacks. They could have come up with at least a decent lie, where we've spent it on hand sanitizers, on gloves, they could have come up with a decent lie. But no, they decided to be like, we spent it on tea and snacks, and we just, oh, okay, that's just what they did, and we moved on. Kenyans need to take not a backseated approach, to take a more hands-on approach. That was the term I was looking for, as far as leadership goes. Because our country, people always spell doom and gloom. Oh, we're going to get run into the ground. Oh, we have massive debts with China. But in a generation's time, no, let's not even go that far, 10 years' time, we'll be feeling that impact, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's going to be very, very sad. Very sad indeed that that leaders who selected themselves and later we elected in a not so credible election are the ones who are going to make decisions that are going to impact the 47 million of us and counting, because that number keeps growing. And that's going to be such a rough time for us Kenyans, because if the 2022 election is anything to go by, it will be the changing of a guard. Just like it was in 2013. I remember people back here in county number 19 were so excited. Yay, one of our own is still going to hold the office. And nothing really changed. There is something very bizarre about seeing a small-scale farmer with jiggers celebrating that a multimillionaire has become the president. Or seeing a person who, and I'm not speaking ill of those who come from working class backgrounds, but it's really sad to see a fruit vendor or somebody who just rides a bicycle to run errands celebrating and willing to risk life and limb just because a person has to hold a position of power in office. It really saddens me. And when they get to that position, what do they do about it? Because you can give inspirational speeches all you want, but at a certain point, we have to sit back and demand for a level of accountability. But we never do that, and we haven't been doing that for such a long period of time, and we are the ones who are going to have to pay for it. Because this past 10 years, I honestly don't know, this past 7 years, ever since Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta took office, I couldn't say that we're not as, would you honestly say, okay, this is a question to you as the viewer. Feel free to challenge me, feel free to troll me, feel free to do whatever you please. But do you genuinely think that the country has gotten better or worse from former President Mwai Kibaki's administration? Just think about that for a few seconds. If you are to compare back-to-back administrations, which one is better? From cases of corruption to economic growth to broken promises, which one is better? But we also have to put into consideration that Uhuru Kenyatta had to is working with a constitution that makes him significantly weaker and that also limits his power as the executive head of the country, and that he had to oversee devolution, which in some areas has been a success and in some places has been a failure. I'm mentioning Nairobi County in particular. It has been a complete failure in certain places. Like Nairobi used to be a very clean city for the most part. You could see that there was progress during the Kibaki reign, but after Uhuru took over and then Kidero came in as the governor, Nairobi County just went down the drain, and even Sonko had to relinquish some of his powers as the governor because they were like, if we let this go on, the country will unfortunately crumble. Something else, corruption. Corruption has become a tale that we sing in Kenya all the time. Billions looted today, billions looted tomorrow. Let me put something into perspective here. 1 million seconds is roughly 11 days. 11 days and some change, like 11 days and 1 million seconds. Let me type that down. Let me search that down. 1 million seconds to days is roughly, okay, according to survivalbees.com, and they are trying to put things into perspective. 1 million seconds equals to 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds equals to 31 years and 31 and 3/4 years. That means it's 31 years and about 9 months. A trillion seconds equals to 31,710 years. So whenever they say that a third of the Kenyan annual budget is lost to corruption, and that's roughly a trillion, we are wasting so much money that could literally change our lives with a snap of the finger, just like that. Just like that. And it always there's something that bothers me when the likes of Joe Moshiri and Andrew Kibe and individuals who's, you wouldn't say that admirable, and I'm not passing judgment, I'm just making an observation. They are the ones who give that moral direction in the country. Let's go back to selection of leaders. During the Kibera by-election, there was the attempt to place MacDonald Mariga as the MP of Kibera. To say it backfired horribly would be an understatement, although the likes of Mutai Ngunyi disagree. They say it was not a failure, but a learning lesson. People have agendas and I get it, but I'm keeping it real with you. That was a failure. It was trying to muscle lane on what would be considered a Raila stronghold for the upcoming elections, and it backfired horribly. And moving forward, we need to have a system of like saying, yeah, you've qualified because we've seen that you can be held accountable. But that's all talk, because if we don't actually vote for it, if we don't actually demand change, like they did back in the colonial days, because people assume a few things about Kenya, like colonization wasn't that long ago. Kenya is only 57 years old. Trust me, a lot of people who are listening to this, you will live, or a significant fraction of you will live to be 57, statistically speaking, of course. Trust me, the country is young. It's a young country. The average life expectancy in Kenya is 64 for a man, 69 for a lady. This country is young. And when we see our future just getting stolen from us, we should be not angry. I'm not talking about a revolution, because I'm not that radical. I think there ought to be systems in place that ensure that bad leaders either get terminated from their places of work or they're not re-elected, but just don't seem to care. Kenya is a 57-year-old country with a bright future, and moving into we're in the third decade of the 21st century. Things are rapidly changing. Every job that was there back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, they are dwindling. Getting a college degree is no longer important. All these jobs that we were told that hey, they become a doctor, become a engineer, become a lawyer, they are no longer as sure. It's a good thing to tell someone, but really, we're outsourcing doctors from Cuba and engineers from China. Everything is going online. Jobs are being lost, especially right now during COVID. And I'm very skeptical that they will hire most of that labor force back, because they will be like, we don't need all this office space. But because there are no structures but we have paper structures. We put things in place. We say that, oh, if this happens, then A should happen, then B, then C. But we don't do that. There is no follow up. And a lot of young Kenyans like myself, we either feel like we generally don't care. We just don't care, because what difference does it really make? I traveled to Rwanda last year in 2018, June, October. And it was so surprising to see this small nation that barely has a fraction of Kenya's natural resources or manpower. And yet somehow they managed to wake up. They're like a phoenix. They rose from the ashes of what you would call the genocide, where 1 million of her citizens was butchered and slaughtered by her own citizens. They created structure. They took a good leader, and he was able to turn that country around. Can we do that as ourselves? We can't. We expect that by some miracle that things will change. We create a cult of personality around these politicians. But moving forward, what do we expect from these leaders? Because ever since 2002, which is the last election, the first election I can vividly remember, those faces that were there back then are the ones that are currently still here. The Raila Odingas in NAC and the Musalia Mudavadis in KANU, together with Uhuru Kenyatta, who's the current president, and the Kalonzo Musyokas. Those are the same faces that we've been seeing for the past 15 plus years. I'm sure they even go way back. Some go way, way back. But if we do not create a system where they can be questioned, where they can be poked and prodded, because at the end of the day, it's our future that we're gambling with. I don't want everyone to think, oh, okay, I have a cousin, by the way, speaking of Rwanda, who left for Rwanda earlier this year. And he says he loves it there. He has a young son here who's, I think, roughly 3 or 4 years of age. And he's like, yo, I'm staying in Rwanda. He's working with the Rwandese government. He had a great job here, but he decided to pack up his bags and leave, because opportunities in Kenya are there, but you always have to know someone. You always have to have the right connections. And this is perpetuated by the leaders. Back in 2017, I remember there was the Muhuho Kenyatta challenge, where there were rumors that Muhuho Kenyatta was being groomed, so one day he could hold a position. Now, I'm not one to judge, but judging by his speaking ability, people turned him into a meme. Because if you can't communicate with the people without reading from your smartphone, and yet you're being groomed for a position, and yet we have another 23-year-old who, using a bicycle, campaigned and he became a member of parliament. What does that say about our country? Like, there are people who are handed things on silver platters. There are people who feel that they are owed something. And one of the few things is that we will always see these videos trending of, oh, this happened, this person gave an inspirational speech, blasting the government. But if we don't have any follow-up, it's all in vain, to be honest. Now, I've ranted quite a bit about Kenya, and I think it's only best that I move to the other country that I'll be comparing, and that's the United States of America. Wow. America is a very unique nation, in my opinion. It's heralded as that, as the mother of modern day democracy. But as of right now, I've discovered that nation, anything and everything can be politicized. Right now, with the COVID crisis, you have Republicans demanding that they reopen the economy. Maybe that has an agenda, I don't know. Then you have on the other corner Democrats saying, yo, let's wait until the curve flattens for good. They're going back and forth, and you're like, is there nothing you can't politicize? Honestly. And I was on Instagram and Twitter, and I just noticed that a lot of Hollywood celebrities have encouraged, pardon me, have encouraged that Americans should vote because they are less than 100 days away from an election. And the two people running are like, why those two? I had a conversation with a friend of mine called Paul. He's a Kenyan, but had the fortune of living in the United States. He was like, how is it that we have two white men, two very old white men in their 70s contesting for a position, yet a huge fraction of that country is young? I mean, like, if you look at the Hispanics, in the last 10 years, they have grown so much. There's a very huge disconnect, and the decisions that they make will impact people moving forward for a long time, unless those laws that they pass into place are abolished. It won't make a difference. And Donald Trump is a very interesting character. Let's hold on before we even get into Donald Trump and Joe Biden, who are the two men who will be contesting for the position of president. That binary system, why though? Apparently, there's a president called Theodore Roosevelt. He tried to introduce a new party. I don't know what it was called the Federalist Party or something. And its logo was a moose. And it's so weird how you have to fall into one of either camps. Yet I think people fall on a spectrum. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I am not a conservative. I am not a liberal. Okay, I'm liberal, but I'm not a complete liberal. I'm moderately liberal. Some issues I agree on, some issues I don't agree on. That's just the way it is. Right now, with the race riots that you have and marches, they have polarized the country even further, which will be very interesting moving forward. But then Joe Biden, is he up to the task? There are those constant memes of him stuttering and saying things like, even rich kids are just as good as white kids, and just start search for it. And you're like, does he have dementia or anything? Because there's a very huge possibility that Trump will win, and that's another 4 years, of this repeated cycle where the media portrays him one way, or at least liberal media houses like CNN, which my dad likes to watch. And then you have Fox News on the other end that will glorify any good deed that he has. And it's okay, fine. They are private stations, they are private media companies, and they have every right to report the news however they want to report it. But it's so weird that a country as respected or as revered as the United States, I mean, you have a star of a reality show, or at least that's how I got to know him. I really loved The Apprentice, especially the Celebrity Apprentice. Now he is running, he is running the country. Like, why? We've gone from a guy from Harvard in Barack Obama to, and this is not a Republican Democrat thing. You can take a guy who's articulate, who can put issues well, who doesn't have to polarize an entire nation. But no, Donald Trump was the guy. And he didn't even win by popular vote. He won through the Electoral College, which makes me wonder, do you honestly think that back in the days of the Constitution, I think it was Joe Rogan who said this, that when the United States was being granted her freedom, and you fast forward almost 250 years later, 244 years later, they've barely made any changes to the Constitution. But it is what it is. It will be a very interesting race to see, especially right now with everything that's happening around the world. CNN recently had an expert saying that COVID could be with us until summer of 2022. Please, I hope not. I do not want to see that happen again. Because apparently what do you call it? The Spanish flu lasted for almost the same period from Spanish flu. Let me search for that. How long did it last? The Spanish flu, yes, from 1918 to 1920. It must have been weird going from a World War to a global pandemic. February 1918 to April 1920. 2 whole calendar years and some change. Are you going to tell me that COVID is going to last that long? No. No, it will not. I'm okay. I'm not an expert, but I'm just saying people won't take that kindly. Because I genuinely thought that this would only last like a month, 7 weeks at the very most. But then April, May, June, July is coming to an end. And chances are August and September, all the way to the end of this year, we will just be in this pandemic. And I wonder how the Americans will vote during that time, because campaigns are Donald Trump's strongholds. But hey, we'll see, because this will be a very interesting time. And with that being said, this has been the Cardinal Podcast. I'm Sammy Derek. If you want to leave your opinions, your comments, your compliments, your criticisms about the topics I've covered, if you want to cover them in depth, feel free to leave a comment down below. And until next time, have a great time. Okay, that's repetitive. Till next time, deuces.